Good afternoon. Today I'm going to talk about remote sensing and GIS application to water resources. First of all, the question arises how much water we need. And as you are aware that on daily basis, like for drinking or sanitation, we need 100 or 150 liter water per day. But if you see in totality, we need lot of water. For example, to produce 1 kg of wheat or 1 kg of barley, we need around 1300 to 1700 liter of water. To produce 1 kg of maize, we need 900 to 1200 liter of water. To produce 1 kg of rice, we need 3400 to 3800 liter of water. It means whatever we are eating, for that also we need lot of water. Then to produce 1 kg of meat, on an average, we need 14,000 liter of water to produce 1 kg of meat. We are wearing clothes. So this is just one example. To produce one cotton t-shirt, 4100 liter water is required, which includes the cultivation of cotton as well as the processing in the industry. So you see, it is not only 100 liter per day or 150 liter per day water is required. It is lot of water is required for our survival. But then this figure will come to another conclusion. In which sector you need more water? So next slide will show you. For example, this is for India. In fact, for agriculture production, we consume around 80 to 85% of water. But the problem is the efficiency is very poor. If you like in India, our efficiency is around 35 to 38%. While if we compare with the developing countries like Malaysia, even it is better 35, and Japan and China even it goes to 50 to 60. And if you talk about Israel, it is even more than 90%. So this much water, total water available in India, we are consuming 80 to 85% in agriculture. If we increase the efficiency of irrigation from 38% to let us say 50%, then you can imagine how much water will be available for some other purpose. In industry, we consume 8 to 10%, and for domestic, which I was telling, and generally people understand that 100 to 150 liter, basically it is only 5 to 7%. So for our day-to-day purpose, we consume only 5 to 7%. Remaining water is consumed by agriculture. So there is a utmost need to improve the efficiency of irrigation to cultivate the crop. Now let's see what is the availability. In India, we have lot of water. In fact, when India got independent, that time it was considered as a water-rich country. Currently also, if you see, we have lot of abundant of water. It is 690 billion cubic meter surface water available for utilization, while in groundwater 432. If you combine both, it becomes around 1100 billion cubic meter water. If you convert to the per capita, currently we have about 1600 meter cube per year per person water availability. We say that if water availability per person in any country is less than 1500 meter cube in a year, then that country is the water stress country. And now with this figure, it is visible now that we are heading towards water stress country. So this is the need of the hour to save the water, to improve the efficiency of irrigation. Not only that, save the water in domestic area, like small saving will accumulate into a big saving. Then we have to go for water harvesting. This is the high time. As you are aware that groundwater is depleting. So we have to save the water, we have to conserve the water, we have to manage the water. Now, it is not only the one problem, but the issue is various. For example, whatever water we are getting from the rainfall. And this rainfall water, there is a lot of variation. For example, there is a special variation in rainfall. In some area like desert, we have only 120 millimeter of rainfall in a year, while in some area like Mausimram or Cherrapunji, it is around 12,000. To be very specific, it is around 11,650 millimeter per year. So you can imagine that 120 to 12,000. So this much variation is there especially. There is a seasonal variation, like rainy season, generally that water rainfall occurs. So 70 to 90% water, rainfall water we are getting during monsoon season only. So water is available only for 3 months, not for entire 12 months, while we need water for entire 12 months or whole year. But then also there is an annual variation, like sometimes it is a drought year, sometimes it is a wet year. Classical example I can quote is 2009 and 2010. 2009 for India it was a drought year, while 2010 was a wet year. So much variation is there. It means water resource management is the key of success of the water availability for the human being. So what actually space technology provides you? It gives you near real-time hydrological information. For example, we are having many satellites, so it gives information maybe within few hours to few days. Then temporal information, we are having geostationary satellite, we are having polar orbiting satellites. So that repeativity varies. If it is a geostationary, it is 30 minutes. Means every 30 minutes we get the data. If it is polar orbiting, that it may vary from every day to 23 days or 25 days. Special information it provides like 1 meter to few kilometer. And of course, the biggest advantage of satellite imagery is it gives you the synoptic coverage. As you are aware that water availability is not a point information. It is a special information. It is not a local information. It is a regional information. Something is happening 100 kilometer away may affect today this place. So synoptic coverage is necessary. So satellite imagery provides synoptic coverage from 25 kilometer to 800 kilometer or more. Even now, if you are talking about CARTO2 data, then it gives you the synoptic coverage of 9.6 kilometer. So this is how satellite imagery help us. Already I have discussed, we have different sensors in different orbits. Generally 2 orbits we are talking about. This is a LEO orbit or polar orbiting satellite. All remote sensing satellites are in this orbit. They are around 600 to 800 kilometer away from the Earth. Now these satellites will provide you with a high resolution data, but the repeativity is poor. The advantage, it provides high resolution data. The disadvantage, repeativity. So suppose you want to understand a phenomena, hydrological phenomena which every day changes, then this system is not good. But suppose you want to have a phenomena with a very high detail, then this system is very good. Then we have a geostationary. So a phenomena which is very dynamic in nature, for example, temperature, cloud conditions, so they change every minute. So we should have a geostationary satellite which gives the information every half an hour. So for cloud cover condition, rainfall, cloud top temperature, wind vectors, this type of satellites are there, and you are aware that currently we have 2 very famous satellites, Kalpana 1 as well as INSAT 3D, which gives weather information. So if you look into the space technology, so let us see the individual parameter, what are the different parameters related to water resources we get from space imagery. So as I told you, we get from geostationary data, we get cloud cover, cloud top temperature, outgoing long wave radiation, which is further information about the rainfall only. Rainfall, of course, indirect methods are there. I may discuss a little bit later. Wind vector. So these information we get from the geostationary satellite because this changes every minute. From other satellite we get land surface temperature, soil moisture, water body mapping and monitoring we can do from remote sensing satellite. Snow cover area and biophysical properties we can get from remote sensing satellites. Leaf area biophysical parameter like leaf area index, albedo. Land use, land cover, water level from Serra Atlantica. Of course, nowadays we can get geological feature, topography we get from the remote sensing. So you see nowadays so many parameters we are getting from the space technology, remote sensing data. In fact, this information related to water, if you see, India has a long history. It started with potential groundwater zone. Currently we have multispectral, microwave, and then with different resolution like 0.8 meter currently CARTO2. Earlier we had IS-1A with 72 meter. So you see how we have improved year by year Not only that, this is a set of satellites, and you see, started long back we started with potential groundwater zonation, snowmelt runoff modeling, forecasting, glacier inventory, command area monitoring, groundwater prospecting, mass balance of snow and glaciers, deep groundwater exploration, of course with models, it is not directly from remote sensing, interbasin transfer of water corridors, irrigation infrastructure planning, performance evaluation, and nowadays we are talking about day-to-day basis water balance studies and water budgeting. So this is the nowadays we are doing. Now let us start with the rainfall, how we can get rainfall information from the satellite data. So you are aware that we have three major bands, or like visible band, thermal band and microwave. In visible band, like optical band, which is blue, green, red, near infrared, shortwave infrared. So we get the type of the cloud, cloud coverage, we get information about what do you call, then thermal band, we get cloud of temperature, height of the cloud and precipitable cloud. Generally for tropical countries, if we say if cloud top temperature is less than equal to minus 40 degrees centigrade, this is a threshold value, then it is going to be rain. So this gives the information about the rain. This gives the type of the cloud. This gives the information about the whether it is raining or not raining. But then once you get this information, microwave data, because it is an active microwave, so we get the information about the rain amount, the rain rate. This is like you can see some cloud here, cloud movement. Of course, this animation is not there, but like suppose cloud is here, it is moving every half an hour. I see how cloud would be moving from here to and hitting this area. So this information every half an hour I am getting. Especially this technique is very much helpful during the cyclones. So this is one satellite we have InSat 3D. It is having 6-channel imager and 19-channel sounder. What is the basic difference between imager and sounder? Imager just give the information, it map the earth in the visible, short-wave infrared, mid-wave infrared, thermal infrared 1 and 2. So this is it will give the cloud top temperature and water vapor. But then we have a sounder which give the 3D information, like every kilometer, let us say that at this height what is the temperature, at this height what is the temperature, similarly at this height what is the humidity, at this height. So every, like every kilometer you can say, or hectopascal. Generally we measure height in the form of pressure, atmospheric pressure. The unit is hectopascal or bar. So we can say at this hectopascal this is the temperature, at this hectopascal this is the temperature. As you go up, temperature reduces and humidity also changes. So all these information are very good parameter for prediction about the rain. And because of this type of satellites information only, our accuracy of has improved tremendously for rainfall monitoring and forecasting. These are some product, this is some example. Maybe today I will show you another image which will show you the today's picture of India. And you can see this I have taken in the morning only. And this is 9th of November 2015. The time is 6 IST, 6 morning only. And what you see here in this, you can see a deep depression over Tamil Nadu region, southern peninsula. You can see here, there are two, then there is another cyclonic towards Arabian Sea, you can see here. Now what is important for India, so immediately by seeing a satellite image, sitting at Dehradun, I can find out there is some problem in this area. And you can see the cloud, the type of the cloud, it may form in the, cyclonic, you can see, look like there is a deep depression I can see here, but it may form a cyclone tomorrow. So there is a possibility is there. So you can see type of the cloud. There is a maybe isolated cloud that may not affect much, but these clouds will have a lot of downpour in Tamil Nadu or Pondicherry in nearby area. You can see here, and there is a possibility because it is forming a deep depression, cyclonic type of formation. So I am sure there is going to be heavy wind speed and all. So this type of information, even for today also, I can see sitting at my place. So this much information you are getting of such type of images. Then we have many other satellites. So nowadays, of course, GPM, Global Precipitation Mission is there. But earlier, and it was a very successful story which I want to show you, it is a tropical rainfall measuring mission. This mission was launched by NASA in association with JAXA, Japan Space Agency. Together they have launched this satellite. This TRMM has 5 sensor. What is important here? It has a 5 sensor. Out of this number 3, PR is most important. It is nothing simply a precipitation radar. What it does, it is a active radar. It sends the signal, and the signals are interact with the water nuclei and reflected or back scattered back to the system. So based on the intensity of the rain, amount of the rain, that back scatter information will be available to the sensor, and it will pass on to the earth. So you will get the information about the amount of the rain, and as time is spent, so you can calculate the rainfall intensity. So this is how it works. Of course, it has a tropical microwave measure also, visible and infrared scanners, and other sensors are also available to update or to improve our rainfall estimation. This is a very good information. Now free data is available on the website. You can go to the TRMM website. Nowadays, of course, we have GPM, Global Precipitation Mission, which is a core observatory, was launched by NASA, and ISRO has a Megatropic. It is a part of it. It's a constellation of satellite where Megatropics is a part of it. So ISRO has launched the Megatropic. So it will also give some information. So combining all these information, a good rainfall estimate is available, and you can see the maps available on the website. So this is one example, global rainfall, every 3 hourly rainfall you can see here. So India is here, you can see. So this is a particular day like 31st August 2013. In fact, last 1 week also you can download from the website. And this you can see every week. So every week accumulated rainfall is available. And then only in August you can see weekly, you can see this area, Gangetic Plain and central India. A lot of rainfall has occurred because you know that August is the monsoon period. So this information, accumulated rainfall or maybe 3 hourly rainfall, is available on the website. Anybody can download and use for the different purposes. This is another area where people cannot reach the snow cover area mapping. Remote sensing data can provide you the exact snow cover area mapping you can see here. This is the Beas Basin in Himachal Pradesh. You can see on this snow cover area is there. Now in June it is reduced. So why it is reduced? Because there is a snow melt, and this snow melt is going to the river and finally to the reservoir, and during lean period it provides a lot of water. Then you can see October. Now June to October, so much snow melt has occurred, and this area is reduced tremendously. So this information is very important to estimate the snow melt runoff when there is no rain during the rainy season or before rainy season also. Now you can see November it is further increased because there was a snowfall. Then December it is increased. February it is very high. Then May it is reduced. June it is reduced. July it is reduced. September it is reduced, and October it is minimum. Then again it will increase. So this type of monitoring can be done. And after this, you can convert this information is given to the hydrological models, and finally you will get the snow melt. Now let us try to understand that how remote sensing and GIS will help us in hydrological modeling. So first of all, what is hydrological modeling? Hydrological modeling is the mathematical representation of hydrological phenomena, and it helps us to understand the process. Not only help us to understand the process, also we can simulate for future. So it is a really very good tool to calculate how much water is coming in the river. Suppose a particular amount of rainfall occurs, so how much water is coming to a particular point in the reservoir or at a particular cross section. So it is not only to tell how much water is coming. If water flow is very high, then we can also predict the flood. So this one example I want to give you. You can see here, this is India. In fact, at IIRS every day now we have a capability that we can monitor the water balance, not only for India but even beyond India also. So what we are doing, we have divided in country into small grids. This is one basin, and we have a model. This model is a very high-end open source model. This is variable infiltration capacity model, and the input from satellites like vegetation area, we get from satellite, so fractional vegetation cover, NDVI, LAI, and then albedo we get from the satellite data. Then soil information, of course, we have the topography. Again, we get the satellite data. It doesn't change much, so you know that we can use Cartoon DEM, or we can use Ester DEM or SRT or DEM. This is again from satellite only, and this DEM can further be what you call converted or into slope map, aspect map, flow direction map, flow accumulation map, which is input for this model. And then we get the forcing in parameters like minimum temperature, maximum temperature, rainfall, wind velocity, humidity, etc. And then finally we put in the model, and this model is a complex model but is open source model. You can download it, and then finally we get the surface runoff, evapotranspiration, and base flow. So these information we are getting by this model. So these are the, what is important I want to highlight here is the what are the input parameter we get from remote sensing. And the advantage of this model is like remote sensing LAI, every 15 days LAI I can get, every 15 days NDVI I can get, every you know that. So the changes I get, and these changes I can incorporate. Other than remote sensing, there is no option for me to complete such type of task for entire country. So this is the advantage of remote sensing data. Now this is even you can see you can monitor your basin. This is one example that we have checked. See, there is a, nowadays people are talking about land use, land cover change. This really create a problem for hydrological cycle, because when you cut the forest, basically you are reducing the interception. Not only you are reducing the interception, you are reducing the infiltration. Not only that, evapotranspiration will change. So basically you are altering the entire hydrological cycle. So finally runoff will change. So there is a concern, even in IPCC also there is a separate, talk, there is a separate volume that how LULC is creating problem to our hydrological cycle. So we have analyzed this thing by using the big model. And what we have done, we run the model for 1972 and 2003. And we try to understand how much change is there in the land use land cover, and how it influenced the hydrology. And you can see this time series graph of hydrograph. This is basically graph between the time and discharge in the river, and we found a very surprising result. However, this is important that we should understand. We have taken resource set AVIPS data, Landsat MSS for land use land cover for 1972, resource set AVIPS for land use land cover for 2003, MODIS LAI, MODIS albedo, GTOPO 30 digital elevation model. Of course, soil map we have taken from our NVSS LUP, and rainfall data from IMD, then temperature data from NCDC, then discharge data from Central Water Commission for validation and calibration. And we have calibrated and validated this model, and that with Ness Sutcliffe coefficient is 0.821, which is very good. What we found that because of the change in the land use land cover, runoff has increased by 24 millimeter, which if you want to convert, it becomes 351 million meter cube. So this much change has occurred because of the runoff. Now, these models are very good to predict the future also, because it try to solve the process. So now what we have done, we have run the same model for 2050 for Mahanadi Basin, and our base year was 2007. So now based on IPCC report, we found there will be change in the temperature as well as the change in the rainfall. Then we run the model for 2050. What you see here, that pink is the 2050 and blue line is the current that baseline, that is the 2007. And within this 43 years, what changes has occurred, we found, of course, from IPCC report that based on the IPCC predictions, the precipitation change, there will be increase in precipitation. So we calculated and we found the runoff will increase. You can see here, pink line is above the blue line. Evapotranspiration will also increase. This may be due to the more rainfall availability as well as the temperature increase. But what is significant is that base flow is decreasing. Now this is very alarming situation. Maybe in future we will have lot of rainfall, Maybe there will be a lot of runoff, there may be more evapotranspiration, but base flow is less. It indicates there will be a less groundwater recharge. Already currently we have, lot of pressure on the groundwater. People are exploiting groundwater. Imagine if in future condition when there will be climate change, then base flow will further decrease. There will be a further depletion of the groundwater. So such type of scenario will help us to decide our policies in future water resource management. We have monitored entire country for 15 years and you can see here from 1991 to 2005 that how that runoff is changing for entire country. In fact, it is not only 15 years every year, it is every day. So 15 into 365. So every day we run the model and every day we got the water balance. Of course, this paper currently now it is published in 2013, current science. So anybody is interested, he can see this what you call paper. In not only that, grid by grid, you can monitor every day. You can monitor how runoff is changing. Now there are some sensors which will give you direct, information about the soil moisture. This is one classical example I have taken. The region was this 2009 was the drought year. So just have to show you how satellite will help us to predict about the drought. Now look at it. You can see blue means high moisture content and red means low moisture content. And this is the July month. Every 3 days by SSMI you can see the soil moisture. Sorry, MSRE. What you see here, you can see this part of Haryana, Delhi and all this West Uttar Pradesh. You can see here July first week. You can see moisture deficit, moisture deficit, moisture deficit, moisture deficit, moisture deficit. It means in July, which is very important month for sowing of the crop, and it is the moisture deficit. So this will alarm us that yes, it is setting a drought condition. So soil moisture, so this is every 3-day product. It is available on the website. You can download. You can really monitor the soil moisture status, which will decide the drought. Now next is operationally what we are doing. Suppose there is flood somewhere. Now people are or relief people or government personnel, they are interested. Tell me how much area is inundated. What is the damage? So how remote sensing will help? A few slides will explain this. This remote sensing will provide you near real-time flood inundation mapping, flood damage assessment, flood risk zone mapping, flood forecasting and spatial warning. Now this is old picture, but it will give you idea how remote sensing will have. For example, there is a flood in an area. This is a Brahmaputra basin. It's a huge basin. You see that in India also, it covers entire state of Assam. And there was a flood. So you want to monitor entire state. So what is the option? The best option is the remote sensing data. You should have a satellite data which will give you a synoptic coverage of order of 700 kilometers, 600 kilometers, something like that. So we have, of course, in 1998 we have WIPS sensor. Now we have AWIPS sensor, which will give you a resolution of 56 meter, but the coverage of 700 kilometer. So you can cover entire basin. That is the advantage of such a satellite. What you get by you get the image, you georeference this image in your server. If you have a district boundary of a state, you simply superimpose. The moment you will superimpose, immediately you will come to know which district is affected. For example, in a figure you can see individual district boundaries. If you go to Barpeta, it is affected little bit. Then if you go to Nalbari, it is affected. Then Kamrup is not affected that much. Darang is affected. Marygaon is affected. Sonitpur is affected. Karbi Anglong is not affected. So immediately you will find not only which district is affected, but which part of the district is affected. This is also very important. It's not only a district. Suppose somebody says Darang district is affected, but people should know which part of the district is affected. So this remote sensing data will give you the special coverage which part of the district is affected. But then it is not only which part of the district, but you can monitor what is the duration. For example, this is a microwave data, of course, radar sat data. This is the first week, second week and third week. What do you see this black, microwave data water appears black, flood water appears black. So you can see this black water is there, second week water is there, third week water is not there. It means in this area, water disappears means flood reduced. So this is less than 2 weeks data. So you can say that within 2 weeks flood receded. While you can see here flood is there, flood is not there, flood is not there. So here less than 1 week flood is receded. But if you see this side, downstream side, flood is there on first week, second week and third week. It means this is the, the long duration flood. So these farmers actually need a big help from a relief and rescue commissioners. So remote sensing data will not only give you the inundation coverage, but it will also give you the information, the duration of the flood. Then damage assessment. So high resolution data, this is the pre-flood, you can see road is visible, and during flood, road is not visible. So this information will give you not only the damage, but at the time of relief and rescue, if road is damaged, if there is no alternate route, then what is the option? You have only helicopter sorties option. So you can plan, you can optimize your helicopter sorties for relief and rescue by using the satellite imageries. This is a very important thing. Earlier, there was no other option. Generally, whenever there was a flood, trucks or lorries were going, but they were stranded. They don't know because there was a road is damaged. But now with the help of satellite images, we can find out which road is damaged. Is there any alternate route? If not, then there is only option of helicopter dropping relief. So this is very important information for the relief people. This is again one example, jetty is visible before cyclone and after cyclone jetty is not visible. But actually yes, this is what I told you so far is the once flood occurs. But can I predict the flood? So this is very important, and for that I should do the flood modeling, flood simulation. So there are, again I told you, there are models available generally for flood simulation. There are different set of models, like we use what you call Mike 11, Mike, or if you want to go for open software, free software like that, you can go for HEC-RAS, which will give you a kinematic web information, and routing will be there. So then in combination of HEC-HMS, HEC-RAS, you can find out which area will be inundated if this much amount of rain occurs and what time. Because this is the cross section of the river, this is the along the river, and this is a particular cross section. So engineers will calculate how with respect to time water will move in a cross section or along the river. But then if you have a satellite imagery and digital elevation model, you apply this information here, then it will tell you that at what time water will reach here, at what time water will reach here. And this is very important to give the alarm for the people, because people wanted to know whether with this much of rainfall or this flood, whether this will come to my house or not. So flood simulation will help to tell them whether this water will come to an individual house or not. Now we wanted to know the water level in the reservoir. One option is there is a relation between the spread area and that height. But exactly if you wanted to know, we have the satellite. It is known as Saral Altica. This Altica stands for altimeter in Ka band. So it has a Ka band basically. Of course, it has a Argos also. So it gives the you can see the footprint, and it gives the information about the altitude. This is basically altimeter. So if you know the altitude of the water body, so you can find out what is the height. So we have calculated for different reservoirs. In fact, nowadays we wanted to use for rivers also. Once you will get for rivers, then really it will help us to estimate the discharge. Now this is one example I can quote. The Tehri, Uttarakhand, that from Saral Altica we have estimated 817.49 meter that water height, while actually from the field we found 818.10. So how close it is? The error is only in few centimeter. And similarly for Methan, it is again few centimeter. Similarly for Petua Ghat, it's very close to this estuary and in centimeter. So with centimeter accuracy, we can find out the elevation information, water elevation information. And this is very important information to understand the water availability in the reservoir. Rivers, yes, we can use it, but only thing is that river width should be, currently the current capability is it should be more than 1 kilometer, then only it will give good results. Of course, in future we may have satellite where more lot improvement will be there. There we can even a small cross section river we can find out. Snow melt runoff modeling we can do. So as I already have discussed about this snow cover area, and with this snow cover area, we make the snow depletion curve. Can you concentrate on this blue line? You can see here this is a particular zone, means elevation zone, and you can find in the month of October, this is a snow cover almost zero. Then snow cover increases, it goes up to 84% up in the month of February. Then after that, because of the summer started, it start depleting and depleting. When we draw this curve, this will help us to estimate, so where this much snow has gone from year to year, it is depleted. So this is the key parameter for snow melt runoff models. And if you give this parameter to snow melt runoff models, so this is the model, which is a one temperature index model, and where this snow cover area is the key, very important what you call parameter. So then you know that we can calculate. So T, S, and P are variable to be measured or determined. Is there. Then these are the lapse rate is the T, and T critical and K. So then basin area. So all these information we provide. Temperature we get from lapse rate because in Himalayas the lapse rate you know, either you can calculate, or if you don't want to calculate, there is a thumb rule. It is from 0.6 to 0.65 degrees centigrade per 100 meter of elevation. So it is reduced by 0.6 to 0.65 degree centigrade when you go up by 100 meter. So we apply this thing, and then finally we get a runoff in the form of curves. You can see that this using this SRM model, and this is the, and we what you call calibrated this thing with the, or validated with the data, available data, and you can see how accurate is our model that this provide this information, or this model works. This is for 2002 2001. In fact, every year we are estimating. We have completed, I think, 2010, and then again we are working on it. Of course, nowadays we are using energy balance methods. So once we will have an energy balance method, then it will further improve our accuracy, and really more realistic information we can give every year. Irrigation water management, how remote sensing will help us and how GIS will help us. So you can see this image. This is the part of Upper Ganges Canal as seen by satellite. You can see here. This is the satellite imagery, and what you see here, this is the river Ganga, and this is the city Haridwar, and you can see river Ganga is stopped here by a barrage, a famous Bhimgowda barrage, and that water is diverted to this canal. Now this is the main canal. There will be branch canal also and all. So what you see, you can see only main canal, maybe branch canal. Beyond that, because this data is of 15 meter resolution of raster, and what you see here, this is all agriculture plots. Red color is all agriculture plots. You can see the river also, but then this information is about the total. If you want to map entire command area, then this image is okay. But if you want to see the field level information, then maybe 5.8 meter resolution is good. This is again distributary. Now it is no main branch canal, it is a distributary. So you can see a distributary, and you can see here a minor, and individual fields are visible here. So field level information you can get with 5.8 meter resolution. If you want to have a more detailed information, then you can get this a 2.5 Carto1 data. This is one dam, and what you see here is the hydel power. You can see here water is coming, hydel power, then it is again going back to the river. So even a detailed information about the infrastructure you will get with Carto1 data. Even beyond that, this is 65 centimeter. You can not only see the canal, but also over the canal, the structure. This is the super passage. It is very close to Haridwar. And you can see here this super passage because river is flowing over the canal. So super passage is created because otherwise it will destroy the canal. And this small dots you can see, this will give the information about the, that energy dissipating structures are available here. So much detailed information, just like a photography, you can see if you have a 65 centimeter of data. So you are aware nowadays we have there's a commercial like QuickWord. We have GOI, even it is a much higher resolution. But our ISRO may launch a new satellite, Cartosat 3, with a resolution of 25 centimeter. So if you have a 25 centimeter of data, you can see that how much detailed information you will have about the infrastructure mapping. Even nowadays we are monitoring the construction of the canal. What is the length of the canal has been constructed by the engineers. That can be monitored by the satellite. How many structures has been provided, that again can be monitored by the satellite data. So if in a nutshell I can say, if you want to do an irrigation command overall mapping, then probably AWIPS data is good with 56 meter resolution. But if you want to assess the crop type, crop condition, crop acreage estimation, then 23.5 meter data is very good. If you want to do the canal networking and all, then 5.8, and field level information, 5.8 meter data is good. But if you want to look for canal alignment and structural information, then 1 meter data is good. So what are our satellite? For overall mapping, I can say ResourceSat 1 and 2 with AWIPS. For crop type, crop condition, crop acreage assessment, you can use ResourceSat 1 and 2 list 3 or list 4 if you are really looking for a little bit high resolution field plots information. Then canal network then this 5.8 meter or 2.5 meter Carto 1 is also very good. And of course 1 meter is very good for canal alignment, and so Carto 2 is very good for such type of information. Now I wanted to know that what is the performance of my the command irrigation system. So there are different techniques. One technique is either you can use NDVI, so it will give the status of the crop, and that crop will give you a status, will give you vigorness of the crop, will give you the information what is the vigorness of the crop in the command. So we can say where vigorness is more, NDVI is more, performance is good, but it is again subject to the what do you call field information, because that vigorness may depends not only on water, it also depends maybe on some other things also. For example, you find the vigorness is poor. It depends not only the water availability, but also depends on the diseases. So from the field you have to check that why this vigorness has reduced. But there is another option that you calculate what is the irrigation water requirement and what is the supply, and is there any deficit. If there is a deficit, then you can say, okay, this much deficit is there, that is the reason why crop is poor, that is the reason why performance is poor. So that type of that analysis is known as demand supply analysis. How we do? We map the command area, distributory boundary map we get from field, crop area estimation based on the distributory from satellite data we get it. Of course, we have to overlay with distributory with the crop area. So GIS operation. Then from meteorological data we get the evapotranspiration, refresh evapotranspiration. There are different techniques. You can use Penman-Monteith equation, Penman equation. If you don't have the data, if you have only temperature data, then there are some other method like Thornbate method. If you have more information, then Blanica-Dill method. But if you have a total data of meteorological like minimum temperature, maximum temperature, wind speed, wind relative humidity, sunshine hours, then of course you can use the FAO crop bed model, which is a very simple. It is just like a calculator. You can download it from the website, FAO website, and then simply put this information, and then you will get, and multiplied by the Kc, you will get the what do you call actual evapotranspiration. Then divide by efficiency of the system, you will get the irrigation water. So essentially, this much water you should apply for your irrigation. Now, you collect the data about the supply and you see the deficit. So that will give you that what is the performance of your irrigation. So this is one example of Kesapatan branch in Rajasthan. You can see here, this is the crop, it's a Kharif season crop. So this paddy crop, soybean crop is there in this area. This is of course fallow land. Basically it is a ravinous land. Basically Chambal river is here, you can see, which is not visible. Of course, I've cut that river, this command area. Now, this is, Rabi season crop, so mustard and wheat crop is there. This is the digital elevation model with 1 feet contour interval, and canal is overlay. Canal network is digitized. You can see here, individual canal network has been. This is the middle. This is the head reach. This is the middle reach. This is the tail end. This is basically Patan distributary. This is the Anantapura distributary. This is the Makhida distributary. And what you see here, this is the head reach, means head work is here. So water starts from here. So this is the beginning, this is the middle, and this is the tail end. Now you can visualize that how water will be distributed, or what is the performance. So you can see this is the NDVI image. So as I told you, NDVI, red is the high NDVI, then blue is the poor NDVI, and so now you can see here head reach, you see good red color. It means high NDVI, it means very good vegetation. While mid reach, it is a red also as well as green color also. So poor NDVI, average NDVI, while tail end if you see poor NDVI. It means what? Good vegetation is here, poor vegetation is here. So it indicates something. Again, you have to check from the field what is the reason. So you will find it is because of water only. So we have checked from the field, and we found that in head reach the deficit is very little, while in middle reach this deficit is very high, and the tail end deficit is very, very high. So it is now verifying my NDVI image. So that shows how NDVI image, now it's very simple. If you have a satellite image, you can get the NDVI by calculating that reflectance band, reflectance in NIR and red. So NIR minus red divided by NIR plus red, you will get the NDVI. So such a small information, such a simple information will give you idea about the performance of irrigation command. So that's how remote sensing will help not only for infrastructure mapping, condition of the command, but also performance of the command. Finally, I may touch upon a little bit about the interlinking. Nowadays people are talking about the interlinking. This example is not a river linking, but it's linking between two reservoirs, but this may correlate with the river linking also. How remote sensing will help? Suppose you can see on a screen, this is a satellite image where you find two reservoirs. This is a Krishna reservoir and this is the Velugadu reservoir. And what you see here, you want to make a link between these two. Now, by seeing this image, without seeing this, you should have a topo sheet, you should have many information that too you cannot visualize. Advantage of this image is you can really visualize that how this linkage is created. You can see here. Now, if on the image, if I ask you draw a line between this straight line, what you will find? You are crossing good forest, agriculture area. Even if you have a DM, then you may cross, you have to go up and down like this, which is not correct. If you have a DM and satellite imagery, you can avoid this forest area or minimize the disturbance of the forest area, minimize the disturbance of the agriculture area, and nicely and avoid any up and downs, because water has to flow through gravity. So there should be a gradient. So this gradient can be seen with the DEM. So DEM and satellite imagery will help you to optimize this linking of the path. Similarly, it can be done using the for the river. So this is what you can visualize, and we can really utilize remote sensing for route for the interlinking of rivers. So that's all for today. Thank you very much. Please remember, water is very important. Next time when you take a cup of tea, then you know that for 1 cup of tea, basically 140 liter water is required. While if you are taking 1 cup of coffee, 140 liter, and 1 cup of tea, 30 liter of water you are consuming. It is not 200 ml of cup. It is basically you are consuming 30 liter. So please save water. Thank you very much.